Hi, and welcome to our tutorial on creating a WordPress stack and app. This tutorial is designed to walk you through the steps required to create a WordPress stack, which is going to be a reusable template for a WordPress app. The first step is logging on to your VisualOps account. If you don't have one already, it's currently free and incredibly easy to sign up. Just click the sign up free button on our homepage. Once you're logged in, the first page that you're going to come to is the global dashboard. Eventually, we'll have three tabs open here: the global dashboard, the stack template, and our running app. If we click on the top left button, we open up a sidebar that shows us all running or temporarily stopped apps and all stacks other than those that we've deleted. Now back to our global dashboard, and we'll start to build our new stack. So we click Create New Stack, and straight away we can select the AWS region where we want to create our stack. So in this case, we're going to use US East Virginia. So we now have our stack tab open. Now the white space in the middle here is what I'll be referring to as the canvas. This is where we'll be building the stack. Across the top here, we have the toolbar. We have two panels. On the left, we have our resource panel, which will stay consistent throughout. And on the right, we have our property panel, which will adapt dependent on the instance that you have selected. So it will change when we select, for example, the root table, or if we select the VPC, and it will adapt if we select the canvas. Here in the property panel, we will be determining the global settings for the stack. We'll set up our stack in stages. First, we'll provision the resources, and then we'll configure and eventually deploy the application. First, in the property panel on the right, we will rename this stack to WordPress and leave the description blank. Next, ensure we're clicked onto the canvas outside of the VPC and go into our security groups. We'll enter into default security group with this small arrow. You can see there are two rules existing that govern the input and output. Now, generally outgoing rules are fine, but we're only keeping the default security group to allow SSH connections to the instances. So I'll delete the outbound rule. And now I will create a new security group. So I'll go back one stage and select it here under Create New Security Group. I'll rename this one SG Web and make the description Web Server Security Group. Each time we do this, I'll delete the already existing rule. I'll click the blue plus button here to allow me to add a new rule. This time it's an inbound rule. So I'll select inbound at the top of the pop-up. I'll enter my desired IP address. We have a number of options here for protocol. This time I will keep it as TCP and I will input the port range 80. So our security group for our web is now set up and it will appear underneath our default security group. We're going to add some further security groups, and it's generally the same process each time. You simply choose the variables required. So this is going to be our database security group. So I'll change the title of this one to SGDB and put the description as DB Database Server Security Group. I don't need to write a rule for this one, so I'll go back and add my third security group, this time entitled SG VisualOps. With the description VisualOps Security Group. So I'm going to be adding two rules to this one. Again, delete this one, click the blue plus button, and I will select outbound as both of these are going to be outbound rules. Input my IP address here. I'm going to again keep protocols TCP and put port range as 80. On the second rule that I'm going to add, again, click on the outbound, put in my IP, and I'm going to put the port range for this one at 443. Our security groups are now set up, and you can see them all appear here back on the property panel. Now I'm going to start building my template. So first I will resize my VPC. I'm going to go over here onto my resource panel and select my availability zones. So here I'm using US East 1A and US East 1B. So I'm going to resize US East 1A just a little way, like so. And I'm going to go over here to Virtual Private Cloud at the bottom of our resource panel. Now this is where I will find another subnet to add into my first availability zone. So next we're going to add our internet gateway. Now these can actually only be placed on the left border of the VPC. It's worth noting that this is because there are algorithms at work that prevent the diagram from becoming too chaotic or unsightly. So just as you can only place the internet gateway here, you can also not overlap to availability zones, for example. We now need to connect our internet gateway to the route table. So we'll take the small arrow here to the right of the internet gateway and drag it over to the left arrow of the route table. Now we're going to add our load balancer and our auto-scaling group. So we'll go over to open the load balancer and auto-scaling group drop-down. And simply drag and drop the ELB into the VPC to the left of the two availability zones. And again, drag and drop our auto-scaling group into subnet 0. We'll then select the images tab. This is towards the top of the resource panel, up here. So from this drop-down, I'll select the central Amazon AMI and place this into our auto-scaling group. I will then select the auto-scaling group to make sure that I can now adapt this in the property panel. So the name is fine as ASG0. I will change my minimum size to 2 and the maximum to 8. So then our desired capacity will be 4. I'm going to click the tab beneath titled Policy. And from there, click the blue button, Add Scaling Policy. So this opens up another pop-up where I can enter my desired scaling policy. In this case, I'm going to set it up so that when the CPU usage is greater than or equal to 90% for 2 periods of 1 minute, the number of instances will adjust by 2, with the cooldown of, I'd say 2 minutes, so that's about 120 seconds. So this essentially means that if this occurs, there will be 2 extra servers provisioned. There are a number of different alarm options that you can go for here. You can see I've gone for average, but there are different variations that you can choose. So we then just click Done down at the bottom here, and our policy will appear at the bottom of our property panel in pretty much plain English. So you're able to come back and edit this section. You can do so by clicking this pencil icon here, or you can even delete and start totally afresh by clicking the cross icon. Next, I'm going to click onto the Amazon AMI in subnet 0, and over in the property panel, adjust this. So I'm going to rename it first to Web. And below here, we can adjust the instance type. So I'm going to put this one as M3 medium. Just below this are our key pairs. So a key pair actually allows you to manually access and connect to your instances. In the drop-down, there are some that are already created or imported. We're actually going to create a new one by clicking this purple button. Now this will bring up a pop-up box. In the top left-hand corner, there's a blue button to create a key pair. You can click this button and name it WordPress. I've actually already downloaded mine, so just to show you the pop-up here, you would type in the name here and click Create. Once you've downloaded your key pair, you simply go back over into your drop-down. You select the Finder and you type in here WordPress. Select your key pair. And now we can go through the next stages. So we click the Automatically Assign Public IP. We go to the next drop-down, which is our advanced details. And in here, we'll be able to check the box to enable CloudWatch detailed monitoring. Again, below this, we have root device. We can set this to our desired volume. In this case, I'm going to go for 64 gigabytes. And below that, again, we have the option to select our security groups. So this time I'm going to select the default security group and security group web. Back to the canvas now. And what we're going to do is make a replica of the ASG0 in subnet 1. So we can do this by dragging and dropping it from its right-hand corner. Back over in our resource panel on the left, we can open the image section again, and we're going to get an Ubuntu image, which we're going to now drag and drop into subnet 2. We'll make sure that this is still selected, and in the property panel we can change its host name, this time to database, and choose our number of instances. So I'm going to keep this as 1. Again, we can adapt the instance type. Here I'm going to change it to M3 extra large. Then check the EBS optimize box below. Again, in the next drop down, we're going to select our key pair. So in the Finder, just look for WordPress. The next drop down, and we can check the box again. The next one down from this, we're going to be setting our desired volume size for our root device, this time 1024. Again, next one down, check the auto assign box, and finally select our security groups. So in this case, default, database, and VisualOps. Which reminds me, I need to make sure that I have selected VisualOps over here as well. So next we're going to make the links in our network. First we're going to link our web to our database. So we take the top left corner of our web and drag it over to the top right corner of our database. Another pop-up box will appear where we can enter our security group rules. So here I want to allow SG Web to initiate traffic to SG database, keep the protocol as TCP, and port at 3306. Again, this pop-up is pretty much in plain English. We just click add rule and it's there. Now we can now see the two are linked on the template. You can even change the line style in the toolbar. It's up here on the right. When we move the cursor over the lines, they actually become opaque. This is actually known as the Obama effect. Next, we're going to make the link between the load balancer and the web. So we'll take the port of the load balancer and drag it over to the left port of the web. Now in this pop-up, I'm going to give a slightly different rule. I want to allow the ELB to initiate traffic to SG Web, again protocol TCP and port 80. Click add rule and our connection is set up. Now the last steps in setting up our resources is to select the load balancer and configure this in our property panel. So first we're going to make sure that it's internet facing. Next I will select health check configuration, and in here we can change the ping protocol. Now we're going to change this from HTTP to TCP. Now that's the final stage, so we now have our resources set up and designed, and we can move on to configuring our software. First, we'll click onto our database and open our state editor panel. Now this is located in a tab next to the property panel. Alternatively, you can press Ctrl S. You can find more of the shortcuts available in the drop down here underneath your username. So we'll click add a state and choose our desired state. So the first one we're using is apt package. When selected, you can see all of the options for the parameters come up. Click the information button here to the top left, and this gives you more information and examples about all of the possible parameters for that state. So this is entirely interactive and will apply to whichever state that you're currently working on. So here I'm determining that my SQL Server will be installed using apt, so I'll give it the name MySQL Server. By clicking add state again, I can add another, this time command. Now this is going to replace the bind address of the MySQL Server, so it's going to allow the server to accept connections from remote clients. So I'll type in the command here. This highlighted section will be replaced by the private IP address of the database server once the app is up and running. My next state is going to be service. Now this will start my SQL Server using the name MySQL. I'm also going to add a watch parameter for this state. So if this file changes at all, my SQL Server will automatically be restarted. I'll create a directory state in which I will store the Bootstrap script. Next will be my file state. So here I will input the path under which I'll create the script, and I'll paste the script into content. Now this creates the database and user and grants the necessary privileges. I will set my file mode to 644. The final state that I will issue is the command to run that script. So I'll input the command here. Now we only want the script to run once, therefore we'll create a marker file also. So we'll use the ifPathAbsent parameter. If this exists, we'll be ensured that the script won't run again. We'll now determine the states for web. So we'll select it on the template and again open the state editor and panel and add our states. So the first determines that we will install the following packages using yum, which I'll type here under name. We'll next add an archive state. So here I'll specify that I want to download the latest package from the WordPress website. So I'll do this by typing the URL that we need into source. And under path, we'll give the directory that I want it to be unzipped into. I will add the ifPathAbsent parameter to ensure that the package will only be downloaded and unzipped once. Next, I'll add a file state. So here I'm going to create the configuration file for WordPress. The content that I'm inputting here is a stock configuration file, so you will need to edit this slightly. I've already updated the database name, username, and password. Now we need to connect WordPress to the MySQL database. Instead of hard coding an IP address in this configuration file, we can use VisualOps reference variable @. So when you launch the app, VisualOps will provision the database instance, retrieve its IP, and render this variable. And I'm going to add a wait state here also to make sure that the final state of the database has been executed before our following state is. The final state I will add is the service state. Now this ensures that everything is up and running by adding a watch parameter here. So if there are any changes, it will automatically restart. So now both have been done. We can save in the toolbar here on the top left. You can of course save throughout the process. If you want to stop and come back, simply click and next time you log in, you'll start from where you left off. Now to click Run Stack. This will then bring up the validation stage. So here you can rename your app if you like. You can determine your app usage, so for example to benefit testing or production. Here you'll also be able to see some warnings. Now this is just to let you know of any potential issues. The errors section here will let you know about any actual issues, and the stack won't run if there are any. Here you have your cost estimation for the month, so nothing has been charged at all. If you're happy, then simply hit Run Stack. This can take a couple of minutes. If you want to keep track of what's happening, you can click on the small bell icon located in the top right corner here. So our app tab is now open. As you can see, it looks very similar to the stack template. However, if we take a look at the states panel again, we can see where it slightly differs. So here we can see the states that we previously determined and the stage that they're up to in deploying the software. Yellow is pending, it will go green when it's done, and if unfortunately it fails, it will go red. You can click the refresh button here to keep it up to date. You can also easily edit the app by clicking this green button to the top left of the canvas. This will then add the resource panel again, so your app can easily be scaled up to perhaps accommodate for more users or even scaled down to save on cost. If you make a change, just click apply and it will revalidate to make sure everything's still in working order. In the toolbar, you can stop or permanently terminate the app at a click of a button. So now all of our states are green, our app should be up and running. We can check that it is by accessing the IP of the server. And there we have it, our functioning WordPress app. If you have any further questions or queries, please refer to the documents page on visualops.io or feel free to contact us directly at info@visualops.io. We welcome all of your comments and feedback, and thank you for watching the VisualOps video blog.